I'm going to start. I know a lot of you will be very well known in the industry and amongst the audience, but in case not, I'd like you to just each introduce yourselves as we go down the line here. So starting with you, Nikhil.
Thanks, Rachel, and thank you for having us here. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nikhil, and I'm working with Fairprice Group as Retail Media Lead. What that means is I'm working on building products that will help our advertisers deliver better outcomes on their digital marketing solutions, whether that's on-site, off-site, or in-store. So very nice to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Nikhil. Dan.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Dan. My team looks after targeting insights and measurement, and we're building a lot of products for both traditional retail, commerce media brands to extend their audiences onto the open web in the Yahoo DSP.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dan. Agatha.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Agatha. Some of you know me as Aggie. I'm the global head of marketing, and I take care of brand, social, comms, and loyalty at Scoot here in Singapore.
Fantastic. Thank you, Aggie.
Great. Hello, everyone. My name's Mark Turner. I work at WPP Media and look after affiliate and partnerships. So that really goes over the scope of traditional affiliate, but also looking at our commerce partnerships and then also our influencer partnerships as well.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. Uma.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here. My name is Uma Ranganathan, and I work with Dentsu Solutions. I'm looking after solutions development, working across commerce solutions as well as white spaces and new retail media's focused sort of like solutions that we can take to the market as well as take to our clients. Nice to be here. Thank you for having us.
Fantastic. So we've already, throughout sort of some of the earlier discussions here today on stage this morning and then throughout a few other discussions, obviously the topic certainly of retail media has come up, but also we've spoken a little bit and touched a little bit on how brands are executing in a commerce media environment too, what the link between those two things are and what that looks like from a data-driven marketing perspective, both strategically and operationally. So I'd like each of you to give me a little bit of commentary on how you see that piece, retail media, into commerce media, data-driven marketing, from the perspective of where you sit in the industry. So Nikhil, perhaps you can start and you can tell us a little bit about how you're approaching that at Fairprice.
So for retail media, essentially what we're looking at is working with our advertisers on very outcome-focused solutions, and essentially data-driven is our bread and butter. How we integrate first-party data into making sure that we're able to deliver better outcomes all through the marketing funnel, from targeting to execution and optimizations, and then finally measurements and attribution. So we're seeing a lot of focus on and transition towards outcomes instead of purely in inventory-based sales. And that's where we're driving towards as well, to working in a co-creative manner with our advertisers to build solutions instead of inventory-based sales that have traditionally been the way it's been sold by Fairprice.
Yep, and so that's super interesting because so that's taking your retail media data but trying to execute it in a commerce media environment. You also mentioned when we were having a chat in the preparation for this that Fairprice has got a really strong share of the market here in Singapore, and so therefore you've got a lot of very rich data segments. So what has that journey been like for you as a retail brand? So very capable of operating a traditional retail media network. What has that journey been like for you, using those rich data segments to underscore your data-driven marketing and to sort of branch out your commerce media activation?
Right, so Fairprice has quite a rich history, and we have a very strong loyalty program as well, meaning about a decade's worth of data on first-party data for transactions, behaviors, and recently in the last few years, we've been investing into branching out purely from endemics into then working with non-endemics as well to drive, to cover a broader market segment. And so we are seeing a lot of movement from the endemics into non-endemics, building out marketing solutions. And in that, yes, first-party data, of course, from a transactional, behavioral, and demographics perspective has helped us in driving better, sharper targeting. And that's what we are seeing in terms of data, the data being used from a marketing standpoint.
So much to unpack there, but I'm going to skip over to Aggie, the other brand marketer on the panel, just to give us a little bit of a rundown of how you're approaching the very same thing within Scoot. Obviously, Scoot, budget airline from Singapore Airlines, and then within the SIA group. So perhaps you can tell us a little bit about that, your retail media, into commerce media, data-driven marketing.
Sure, happy to. I'll say maybe first for me to set up the context of things. I think so. The long and short answer is I'll say for Scoot, retail media actually intersperses with commerce media, and the context for that is given that we're the low-cost arm of Singapore Airlines. Everything is all about operational efficiency, and therefore, for instance, unlike Singapore Airlines, we do not actually have a physical shop in the heart of town. Everything is actually transacted digitally. So that's one. And therefore, I think our entire ecosystem is where we hope to sort of like bring a consumer through the entire discovery journey into hopefully converting them at the same time while maintaining that level of efficiency. So I think that's sort of like one aspect of that. There is so I'll say there are sort of like multiple objectives that we have to go through in the case of our media, whether in this case it is retail or commerce media, it's somewhat the same space. So i.e. our website, our app is where transactions really take place. Obviously in the sort of like travel space and aviation space, there are sort of like your trade retailers, i.e. the likes of online travel agents and APIs and things like that, your Expedias and Trip.coms and things like that. But I think in our case, it really is a self-contained ecosystem within Scoot's sort of like own channels. And then we're also a part of a larger sort of ecosystem within the Singapore Airlines group of companies from a loyalty perspective.
Fantastic.
I don't know if that's clear enough.
Yeah, no, it is. And I've got lots of subsequent questions then about how you perhaps execute across some of those really rich data segments within the group. But I'm going to come back to those because I want to now give other panelists an opportunity to dive in here. Dan, perhaps you could speak a little bit from your perspective, what you're seeing with your clients and how you're approaching retail media and commerce media opportunities at Yahoo. How do you articulate the value of what people can do in a retail media network over into a commerce media network and underscore it by your sort of perspective on data-driven marketing? How do you articulate that to your clients?
Well, I'll do my best. So we're in quite a unique perspective. There's really only us or Google that has this as a publisher across the region. We have a first-party mail service and 100 million logged-in users, but we're also an ad buying platform as a DSP, and then we have a supply-side solution as well. So we have a pretty unique perspective there. What we're seeing is that there is immense opportunity, and I was having a read of some of Mark's numbers before this. Asia is the fastest growing retail media region, predicted to grow 13.5% year on year. So there's a huge opportunity, but there's also an immense burden of choice, and particularly in markets like Southeast Asia, more so than say Australia, where I come from. So to explain that, here you've got Grab, you've got Shopee, Lazada, Carousel, you have Fairprice, you have so much choice, and you throw in social commerce on the top of that, TikTok, shopping, Insta Reels. So there's actually so much to choose from. And then the emergence of financial or payments-based commerce media as well, so you've got about 5 areas there. So it's a really difficult thing to solve as a brand, looking to navigate that, to understand your audience, and then manage things like reach and frequency or deduplicate conversions. What we've focused on at Yahoo to finish up our perspective on that, started in the US, supporting challenger brands in retail like Costco or Lowe's, and then more recently in Australia with Block Inc. which is the owner of Square, Cash App, and Afterpay. That was quite a unique thing because it's multi-category. It's not parked in, say, just grocery stores, and it's based on data from 240,000 merchants. So it's very different to what the market was used to, and that gives the opportunity to reach not just endemic brands, where you can pay with, say, an Afterpay, but non-endemics as well, who see that as, well, essentially, the publishers of the future. We're not just talking about people browsing on websites or search. We're talking about first-party deterministic data paired with in-flight sales lift and incremental sales lift, which has been a big point today, which was great to hear, more than clicks and conversions. How do you look at a control and expose group in the campaign to show incremental sales alongside footfall or search or other things? So that's the outcomes coming in there.
Fantastic, because like you said, there was a really good panel session earlier this morning.
Really good. Yeah, the one with Neeraj, and then before that, it was great.
Yeah. And so it's really good to, that's the flavour of conversations on stage here at ATS, right? It really feels like we are moving into much more of a practical application there. Uma, I'm going to come to you. Please tell me how, together with your clients, you're sort of helping them navigate their way through a retail media mindset into a commerce media mindset. No doubt you work with a really wide range of clients, maybe some of them e-com, maybe some of them classic retail, maybe some of them somewhere in between. How do you help them navigate this complex space, and what are you finding is working for some of your clients?
So I think for us, the way we look at it is how do we serve the client best by taking a very integrated approach, right? And what is the role of retail media and how it fits into it? I think retail media, unfortunately, has been cast as a lower funnel medium only, primarily because the whole premise is the rich data that it has, this whole deterministic data, which is so outcome-based. And because of that, it gives marketers this elusive accountability factor, and therefore it's been pegged and sort of like put into this lower funnel. But there is a lot of value of utilizing retail media information or data and bringing it into an integrated play when we are looking at audience planning, or when we look at other sort of like awareness consideration, and then of course the whole lower funnel purchase element of it. So the way we look at it is how can we look at the various retail media information that we have available to us, and because there is so much of fragmentation, we have to find the right fit of the right retail media supplier, so to speak, with what the brand requires, and then how that fits into what the brand requires, and in what intersections can we bring in the retail media elements and utilize it correctly. So whether we buy it as an inventory or you use it just the data to understand the audiences, or just to enrich what we already have from the client side. That's the way we sort of like approach it from a more holistic, integrated way.
And do you find that that's something that, is sort of speaking the language of brands? Do they understand that? I mean, I guess in that sense, you're really getting them to, like you said, look at the holistic picture, determine their outcomes, and then you take it from there. Or do you find that some brands are coming to you saying, I want to understand specifically how I can activate better in a retail media environment?
So it's a bit of a journey on both the agency side as well as the client side. I would say the agencies are probably just a little bit ahead of the brands at this point in time, because we're just closer to what's happening in the industry and the publishers, and we're just sort of like those brand whisperers in between for them, right? So I think the brands are definitely trying to understand what the buzz is all about with respect to retail media. They are very used to parking their sort of like percentage of the budgets in the well-known programmatic space, what's the big 2 or 3, so to speak, at this point in time. And then, yes, definitely challenging us to figure out what is retail media all about, how does this help me, how does it bring this incrementality, and at what cost, right? I mean, is it going to be, if I do that 5%, 10% test and learn, what's the value that I'm going to get back from that? And it's a bit unfair, really, because they are slightly two different playing fields. What you look at in programmatic is very different in terms of the data, as well as what is delivering back in terms of the ROI, while retail media is sort of like put up as a poster child of you have to give better, give me equivalent ROI at this particular stage on a very different sort of like metric, which is accountable, purchase-led, etc. Right? So we're helping, I think, brands to navigate and understand it. We do find that our sort of like global clients are starting to think a lot about what the role and the whole retail media strategy will be in their brand planning, not just from campaign to campaign basis, but almost like on a year basis. How will it take their brand throughout the year? Yeah, that's what you'll find.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Mark, tell us what's happening over at WPP, how you're tackling this and working together with your clients to maybe bring some of that to life. Do you have a similar approach to UMA, where you are taking it, on a case-by-case basis and trying really to get to the heart of brands' desired outcomes, or is it more of a strategic play?
I think very similar to what Uma said. It's really trying to help brands understand that fragmented ecosystem that is constantly evolving. We've already spoken about Lazada, Shopee, TikTok Shop coming through. AI is soon going to be shoppable as well. We're seeing Google become more shoppable, YouTube become more shoppable, and a lot of it is about being kind of an ambassador of education for the brands to really help decode that and help them understand it. I think we've probably spoken quite a lot about the endemic brands, but I think we touched on a few points around the non-endemic brands, and I think the retail media and commerce, commerce data is also really, really important for them. If I take it from maybe like a partnerships perspective, and if we have brands that are able to attain really rich sales data, let's say from a Fairprice group, someone like that. If I'm a brand like Disney Plus, I might think I know who my audience are, and I might think I know where my opportunities are. But if I can get an understanding of the audience and their purchase behavior, let's say, for instance, at Disney, I know people with children might be, or at Disney Plus, I know people with children might be a large part of my audience. But what I might not know is that, for instance, people with children are regularly buying, or people that buy infant nutrition also regularly buy pet care products, things like this. And it might actually open up a new audience or new, let's say, new partnership opportunities where, as Disney Plus, I can go and speak to a Purina, someone like that, and say, although these don't seem totally relevant, we actually know the audience crossover is absolutely huge. So I think there's a lot of value to be had, even by non-endemic brands. I think we then get into an interesting place in the, let's say, in our ecosystem where we're getting a lot of commerce-first brands, or let's say commerce-only brands that only exist on, let's say, Shopee, Lazada, and some that only exist on TikTok Shop. And I think that's going to be really interesting about how we narrate and bring them into this retail media ecosystem from the starting point. And I think that's going to be somewhere where the industry kind of has to grow and has to develop and has to build on, as well as these kind of, as these commerce-only brands want to start touching in traditional media, digital media, but don't have any first-party data to do so.
Yeah, okay. And so that leads in nicely to, I want to now talk a little bit more in detail about data management and execution, but I'm going to draw on that endemic brand point and just come back to you briefly, Nikhil, because you said non-endemic brands is something that you're starting to focus on. So are you imagining, a world where you're using your rich, in-store data, customer data, to encourage non-endemic brands into your retail media network? And if so, what does that look like? How are you setting that up and executing it?
Right. Yes, so we are, as I mentioned earlier, we have a very rich first-party data. So we're looking at combining that data across transactional and behavior to create those segments. The good part here for us, where we come in as a very strong contender or in a very strong position, is because through the loyalty program, we're able to touch upon both the online and in-store transactions and tie them back to the same audience through our Link Pass loyalty card. And that allows us to know the exact transactional and behavior data, behavior patterns in a very strong way and create those custom audiences. Now, taking that and what Mark was sharing earlier as an example, we can identify those behaviors and tag them back to non-endemic clients as well. So, for instance, say accident insurance or personal accident insurance, where customers are buying products like Band-Aids and
First aid.
First aid, yes. So we're able to take that, and then we're able to then construct those customer journeys to engage audiences at the right time and the right place. And that's where we're working very closely with the non-endemic brands to co-create the right solutions. And that's the direction we're looking at. We're seeing a lot of advertisers interested in, and to be able to then create those campaigns in a very effective manner. I think the other place which also helps us is what we talked earlier about in terms of reach. Given that we have a very strong coverage, and we're essentially covering 9 out of 10 households, that again gives us a very broad-based coverage that we can work with and support our non-endemic advertisers. So that's what we've initiated, and we are now working with them to co-create those solutions.
And presumably this is big area of potential growth for you, because, you know,
Absolutely.
with that much of a share of households, you know, it's an opportunity for a whole wide range of non-endemic brands to get interested in targeting your audience or advertising to your audience, right?
Absolutely. So now it's more about identifying those right moments and identifying the right levers, both to create the audiences, and I think that's where we'll probably touch upon AI in a bit, but creating those audiences and then engaging those audiences at the right time.
Yeah.
If
Would
I
you
could
like to stop in there,
just
Dan?
add on that, I think we've kind of all seen this before with the evolution of publishers. If we go back a long time, they were monetizing space on their website around contextual. You know, an ad for an auto company on an auto page. Now, skip forward to now, the big retailers have loyalty, logged in users, and SKU level data, which has been great for measurement and attribution for brands which are on their shelves. The next is looking at how all that data can be used, as you said, Nikhil, for non-endemic brands for full funnel campaigns, just like publishers packaged up audiences in that way. So it's just really interesting to see all that play out again.
Absolutely, and because that's becoming relevant at every level of buying, right? This morning I was talking about sell-side curation, so sell-side tech side of the ad tech industry trying to offer up very specific curated inventory packages because they know exactly who brands really want to speak to. So Aggie, could you tell us a little bit more about what's going on at Scoot within the SIA group to make best use of all of that rich data that you've got across those properties within SIA? So are you able to use the data that comes obviously from your Singapore Airlines customers as well, your Pelago customers and any of the loyalty programs, and you're activating that presumably within your owned and operated inventory, but are you thinking about making that inventory available to other advertisers?
Maybe I'll answer this sort of like in two phases. I think one at a group level, certainly the opportunity for sort of like cross-sharing of data responsibly, obviously, and sort of like looking at opportunistic moments where we can sync up the offers. I think that's definitely a discussion at a group level, so that's high level. Then maybe I'll sort of like segue and just talk about this from a Scoot perspective. Perhaps something that's not very well known. So I sort of wear two hats as a client. I think I played a brand role for Scoot in terms of obviously looking at, how we basically create the Apple funnel, going down the sort of like mid funnel and obviously conversion. But at the same time, actually, we do actually monetize our first party data today. It's in a responsible, very low-key way, we do that. It's not the core part of our business, that's it. And I also think that it's probably, in this case, possible and to some degree opportunistic because of the nature of the transaction life cycle that a customer go through. So in our case, figuratively, a person may start browsing into our website, do some researches, say, T minus 30 or 60 days before making an end purchase. Obviously, to some degree, I could have captured your footprint already, and I can, potentially identify who you are, especially if you're a member, if you're a KrisFlyer member. Then with that footprint, I can potentially also dedupe sort of like what your interest levels are. And you know, I think the panelists talk about rich data. And in this case, you know, that allows me to potentially, you know, zoom in on the persona that you are, sort of like the sort of destination you're looking for, and to some degree maybe your group size and even your budget and all that sort of thing. So sort of like, you know, potentially just sort of like imagine that being a target profile for both ourselves as well as for, you know, endemic brands or not. So, and I think the other thing that's very interesting, perhaps not quite a Fairprice example, but, you know, we pretty much can track that customer from T minus 30 days all the way to 3 days before flight, all the way to the point that we know we've brought you to your destination. And at the right time, you know, serving up sort of like relevant messages that hopefully will be relevant to sort of like, you know, to the passenger. So sort of like, just imagine, say 3 days before departure, I can send you a reminder of sort of like your important checklist, time to check in and all that sort of thing. But at the same time, you know, possibility of having relevant partners that potentially may be providing Wi-Fi, you know, services, and last minute insurance, you know, and all of that, to the point of even delivering you, say, to your destination in Hong Kong, and smack, you know, right when you land at the airport, and potentially having sort of like hotels and attractions, then, you know, sort of like providing relevant services and all that sort of thing. So I say, in that sense, you know, our sort of like our journey is somewhat different from probably your average retailer, in that we're able to capture that entirety of that journey, and that's what makes it very interesting. But that said, given that I sort of wear both hats, you know, I think that balance in our case will be, you know, how much is too much, and not wanting to sort of like, you know, sort of overextend that relationship. And I think in our case, we, you know, really endeavor to sort of like be that responsible brand to our consumers as well.
Yeah. Okay, that's really impactful. We talked earlier on in another panel about, you know, using less data but using it better. So being a bit more focused and targeted with it. I'm now just going to open up the questions on data management and execution to our agency panelists. Tell me a little bit about how you're managing and executing on data on behalf of your clients, and whether there are some AI tools that are involved in bringing all of that together, or offering additional insights and optimising some of the efforts that you're undertaking on behalf of your clients. Mark, we'll start with you, and then you, Emma.
Yeah. I think I'll delve into the AI piece first, and the kind of AI tools that we have developed within the agency, and kind of the use cases around them. I think it largely sits in two areas. One of them is executional, and that might be you know, bid management strategies within kind of dynamic out of home, these sorts of things, to actually ensure that the campaigns that we're running are as optimized as physically possible. But I think the other part, and I think this is really important when we've been talking about the fragmentation of Asia Pacific and all of the kind of commerce players and retail media within the ecosystem, I think AI has a really important role to play in level setting education, for really getting a strong grasp of understanding kind of the baseline of the ecosystem, all of the different areas that you can play in, you know, what are the downfalls or the pitfalls or the benefits of each of them, and how to work with them together. I think one of the best things as an agency that you can have is an informed client. When you're working with an informed client and you have an informed team, your job becomes immeasurably easier. So having AI systems that we work with internally that can help us kind of translate that fragmented and difficult ecosystem into a clear and concise narrative, I think really helps people make smart decisions, whether that be agency side, whether that be brand side, or even whether that be vendor side.
Yeah. Okay, great. Uma, you know, you mentioned before that you're very client-led. So, you know, how are you approaching data management and execution, and what AI tools are you using to help you with that?
So very similar to what Mark was sharing, I think the way we're looking at AI also is from the lens of the various functions that can actually help with, right? So it's generative, predictive, or agentic, right? So I mean, if I were to sort of like bucket them in these three streams, and then see how can we deploy each of these sort of like value propositions that AI can offer us in enabling our clients to do better, say, campaign creative generation, which can help them to get to speed to market in terms of media executions. Now that's that naturally then brings in personalization and those sort of elements baked into that particular solution to the client, where it is rightly applicable. We do have a couple of executions there. In terms of the whole predictive, yes, it's also baked into some of our systems, so that it helps our teams to do better understanding of the media planning that they do and how they use our systems to do better recommendations, especially for parsing the different data that they'll have to look at for monitoring, reporting on a regular basis, etc. And lastly, the whole agentic aspect of it, I think it's a little bit of not just the agency, but also what is offered by our partners, and sort of like blending that or working together with them so that things like simple processes and workflows in executions are better improved. That's something that we also delve into client to client. Again, that has a little bit more of reliance on what the partners are able to give us as well from that capability.
Yep, for continued optimization as well, I'm imagining. Dan, tell us a little bit about what's happening from a tech platform perspective when it comes to managing and using AI tools. Is there anything particular that you're executing in a retail media network environment or commerce media environment for any of your clients?
We have been investing a lot in Gen AI to make it easier for time-poor agencies particularly to get the right insights, audience recommendations, and troubleshooting campaigns in platform. Like it's not sexy, but it's actually really valuable and adds a lot of time savings. The bigger way which we're plugging into data management, which I think was part of the question as well, was helping agencies solve this problem of fragmentation and walled gardens with retail and commerce media. So in the last year, we have really put a lot of time into making our identity solution, Connect ID, which, if you remember, I said we've got 100 million people in APAC, making that and the ability to activate on that and plan on that available in things like data clean rooms. So obviously, there's a bit of an arms race happening at the moment. With that, we've got the info sums and the axioms and the lodomies. So we're really investing in being in that place. So if you're running a campaign for a brand, you can see how you're reaching people on social commerce or on traditional retail media or other sites. I mean, that's an ideal world. It takes a big 50-ton gorilla to maybe make all those people play ball, looking at the holdcos right now. But we're there, and you can look at how you can reach audiences in our platform because we're in that safe collaboration space.
Yeah, super interesting. What's happening within brand? Aggie, I'm going to start with you. What sort of data management tech tools are you using? Are you relying on your, tech partners to provide you with all of that sort of, input and guidance? Are you doing things yourself internally? And is AI playing a role in any of that?
It's a combination of all three. So we do have certain sort of like proprietary systems that are in-housed, simply because of the complexity of an airline's business. We also have to work with sort of like proprietary tools. For instance, your booking systems, the likes of Amadeus, Navitaire. I mean, these are sort of like global booking systems that you can't run away from, revenue management tools and the likes. And our loyalty program across the group is actually in-house. The whole Chris Flyer program is actually handled in-house. And we're certainly, well, at a group level as well as at Scoot, we're certainly embracing and trialing sort of like forms of AI in various aspects of the business, I'll say. So at Scoot, for instance, we're using this and integrating this into our Cascare. And prior to sort of like today, so let me talk about sort of like pre-AI. There are two stages. pre-AI of our customer care comprises of a customer hotline, as well as a sort of like FAQ bot. And today we've sort of like integrated the sort of like the AI intuitive bit that will just basically, build on the FAQs and just sort of pull everything together in a much more sort of like intuitive and personalized manner, so that the bot will not give you an FAQ way of answering a question and then say, if all else fail, please submit a question, that sort of a thing. So we've actually already incorporated that. In terms of flight recommender, for instance, in early days yet, but we've wrote that out already. Technically, you can get onto our website and basically go in and put in a search question and say, I'd like to look for, the cheapest ticket to Hong Kong in the month of December. And actually, then that work is actually taken out. And the recommender can actually literally point you to either the dates that you want, within the budget, or even saying, I'd like to find a place that has a beach resort. So we've sort of like gotten to that level. I'm sure it's early days yet, and I'm sure a lot more can be done. But I'll say that we're, again, it's again all about striking that balance in also making sure that, we also balance safety in AI as well.
Yeah. Yep. Super interesting initiatives, though. Nikhil, maybe you can just give us a bit of rundown on what's happening at Fairprice. I know when we spoke, you mentioned that you're dealing with quite a lot of legacy technology systems at Fairprice, and perhaps a slightly traditional approach to tech activation. Tell us a little bit what that's like, what technology platforms you're using, and if AI is engaged in any of that.
Yeah, so considering we are 50 plus years old, there's obviously been an evolving tech stack here. And we're currently investing quite heavily into optimizing that for retail media. So AI is in various stages of either already being deployed or being developed at the moment. What's already there for advertisers is, again, from an execution perspective, smart bid management and keyword coverage, so that we're able to optimize campaigns real time a lot faster, a lot better. And what we're moving towards is utilizing AI from both across the campaign management. So starting from audience identification and classification, moving into real-time audience identification and delivery of campaigns to optimize them better, and then finally attribution from probabilistic models as well, where you cannot identify audience and tie back, especially from an in-store perspective. Online, of course, it's a lot more deterministic, but in-store, we're working on how to improve and attribute a lot better and a lot stronger. So in various stages of development and progress, but we're looking at making it a lot more holistic.
Yeah, lots of practical application there. I'd love to ask more detailed questions on that, but we are more or less running out of time. I'm going to move over to my final question, which is asking you all to tell me what you are hoping to see in the retail media, commerce media space in the coming 12 months. Just before I do that, I'm going to ask everyone to have a look in their app. We've got a poll for this particular panel session where we just want to understand people's opinions on, if you could just show us the poll question from the tech team, understand people's opinions on the level of investment going into retail media at the moment. Are you able to show us the poll question? Okay, I'm going to leave that with them. Hopefully you guys can see the poll in the app, and we'll come back to that before we sign off. So I'm going to start with you, Nikhil. What would you like to see in the industry regarding retail media and commerce media in the coming 12 months?
So at least from a Fairprice perspective, what we are seeing is a lot more omnichannel, move towards omnichannel, combining in-store and online a lot more cohesively. The second area we are seeing a lot more is from a data privacy standpoint. How do we activate data in a lot better, in a lot more safer, privacy-safe, brand-safe manner across the different channels? And the third area for us would be on bringing in non-endemics as well and co-creating with them and scaling that up.
Yeah, building out your non-endemic offering. And that's fantastic. Privacy and also omnichannel, which are two things we sort of alluded to but didn't really get to in detail on the panel. Thank you very much. Dan, where are you hoping retail media and commerce media might take us in the coming 12 months or so in the industry?
Well, based on the survey, we're in the right room. Almost 70% of people think it's going to grow. So that's good. But we also have a big challenge here in APAC and especially here in Southeast Asia. I think that the big attractive jewel of retail media is that it can give you that SKU level targeting and measurement. But it also means that the mindset can tend to make people addicted to the bottom of the funnel or in that sort of doom loop. And the reality is if you fail to invest in building brand equity over time, you'll probably see diminished returns. WARC puts it of 20 to 50%. So I think the growth opportunity is definitely looking at how we can apply full funnel measurement and targeting. And the big developments in the ad tech world is that it's more than clicks and conversions. And we need to educate people and bring them along this journey to understand the language of brands, average order value, frequency of purchase, share of wallet, not just clicks and conversions, but make it easy to measure as well. So if you're looking at a campaign, what is the incremental lift in search queries, footfall? How does brand lift or attention play in, as well as online and offline conversions?
Yeah.
So that's the responsibility for us to crack that, and that will open up a lot more revenue.
And I feel like some of that is manageable within the next 12 months because it feels like we're just on the cusp of that, right? We're having those conversations a lot. What are, let's not make retail media just about that bottom of the funnel activity. What are the other metrics that brands might want to optimize towards in that environment? So that does feel manageable, right? Not, ambitious, but not too ambitious.
Yeah, but it does. But I was reading a survey, just another... I'm not plugging WARC heaps, but it came out last week. Only 38% of retail media campaigns plan to invest in full funnel.
Yeah. So there's still a long way to go. Yeah. Aggie.
I think in the next 12 months, I'd like to see both brands as well as the media owner in that sense have clarity in their thinking. And clarity in that, I think, this idea of targeting data, it's always there, but sometimes we're in danger of targeting for the sake of targeting without sort of like being clear the sort of engagements we're looking for. And therefore, we just basically just sort of like serve up a whole barrage of rubbish to the consumers. And so I think the opportunity certainly exists, and I really think less is more. Do it bigger, better, more impactful, and it really starts with sort of like within that sort of like ecosystem, that environment. What are the few touch points and why? And then sort of like from a brand perspective, yet again, then within those touch points, what's relevant for me, and sort of like what part of the narrative am I at? Am I sort of like going in for consideration? Am I going for the kill? Or, am I just sort of like leveraging this ecosystem in just introducing myself? And I think that level of clarity sometimes I feel is not quite there.
Yeah, especially when you put it in those terms, it does feel like clarity of purpose needs to be refined a bit, but I think that's a good ambition. Mark?
I'll give you maybe more expectations than hope. But I think one of the things that I'm expecting over the next 12 months is there to be even more fragmentation on the horizon. We're already seeing a huge number of retailers and different partners become more shoppable, but I think that will continue. I think whether it's due to certain tech vendors coming into the market, making content more shoppable, I think that fragmentation will continue. My hope is that with more clean rooms coming about, I don't think these will necessarily solve the problem, but I think it will stop kind of the handbrake that comes on when people then start talking about privacy concerns, etc. It kind of removes that. So I hope that's an edging towards, yes, it might be more fragmented, but there might be an easier way to share that data. And I think the second one is probably kind of what I was mentioning earlier. I think we're going to see more of those commerce only or commerce first brands. start trying to dip a toe into maybe traditional retail, traditional media, digital media, and I think it's going to be kind of a lot of the OpCo's responsibilities to retrain their thinking from medium to large-sized enterprises to work out how do we take a commerce first and only brand into their fledgling steps into what we typically have within our strategy.
Yeah, and I think when you and I spoke in the lead up to this, you mentioned that some of those commerce-only brands, very small businesses, growing really quickly, no real understanding of brand building and some of the sort of traditional, marketing and advertising activities. So that's an interesting ambition as well. Uma, where are we going to be in another 12 months' time when it comes to retail media and commerce media?
So two things. I think I agree with Mark in the fact that I think there's going to be more of the shoppable moments and more channels that are going to be available and sort of like backed up by this whole retail data and inter sort of like connectedness between these channels. And we're already seeing it on YouTube, like you said, and other sort of like spaces. That's one. From a hope perspective, and I see a little bit of that, and I'd just like to allude to it, is using retail media to actually go more sort of like internal into integrated planning and starting of the planning process itself. Using that as an insight to shape audiences' choices of media selection, etc. Not necessarily only as an inventory that is going to be utilized right at the bottom, in a media plan kind of a thing, but actually utilizing that information and insight to sort of like shape your entire approach to media planning. And the one that I wanted to allude to, and I don't know much more details about it, we should all look it up, is, dentsu has done some attention planning collaboration with Co-op in UK, bringing in that information for helping planners to understand better the audiences. And I thought it was very, very interesting and exciting. So that's the kind of thing that I'd really hope that we will start seeing, where retail media is viewed much more broadly.
Yep, broaden the view. Fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. That's all we've got time for. Please, a round of applause for our wonderful panellists. Thank you, Nikhil, Dan, Aggie, Mark, and Uma. I think a little photo, and then we'll move on to the next session.